What's good, people? Welcome to another episode of the Melody App series In the Loop. Today, we're here with the Senior Director of A&R from Masterpill Records, Mark Goodchild, also known as Exec.
I started as a DJ, so that's where Exec comes from. I was DJ Exec. It's a long story why I came up with that name, but I went to Atlanta really to pursue my DJing career.
Okay.
And while I was there, I fell in with Dallas Austin, working at his studio and with his team. And I discovered engineering was really kind of my calling instead of DJing.
Yep.
But I kept the name because, you know, if you have a nickname in the business, like Young Guru, Duro, you know what I mean? It works.
Then after working with Akon, kind of like what was kind of happening after that point? Had you continued engineering? Like,
Yeah,
what was the next kind of...
I continued engineering. I was looking for A&R roles, but I kept having I kept running into great projects engineering-wise. Like I was trying to make a move to LA. I was working with like Benny Blanco and Dr. Luke on some of their projects. And then a young artist, T Mills, who was on Columbia, who's now kind of doing more acting. I mean, he actually has a great group now too, but I was working with him on some of his early stuff. And then I got a call one day, I'm like, hey, do you want to, well, I'm not gonna use all the names, but I got a call about a very big artist. Said, hey, do you want to, be this person's day-to-day engineer? And then the next day I got a call about Usher.
Yep.
So I was looking for A&R roles at that point, but you don't turn Usher down, or this other artist. But I chose Usher because he was just a little more homegrown because I was living in Atlanta. He's from Atlanta.
Okay.
So my A&R kind of career just kept getting pushed back a little bit because I had a long run with Usher, and then I had a great run with Blood Pop as well.
Okay.
And then that's how I got to where I am now because I met Nas.
Through Usher.
Through engineering, but kind of through Usher. I recorded a couple features for Nas when his engineer wasn't available. One for a Justin Bieber album, one for a Nas album.
Okay.
And then, for an Usher album with Nas. And then, I just became his engineer after those 2 sessions.
Got it.
And then after a while, Nas's company that he's a partner in, Masterpill, opened an LA office, and they were looking for new staff and kind of to rebuild the label. So at that point, it just made sense, like, okay, this is when I should make the jump.
For you personally, what is it that you look for when it comes to signing an artist?
What I look for first is, does this music strike me? Like there's an artist we signed now, his name is Lou, who I didn't find from research. I found one day I was just skipping through Spotify, looking at similar artists. Like I would go to one artist and then do similar, and I was just going as far down the wormhole as I could. And I don't know what artist was at the top to get me to Lou, but I heard a song and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is actual real song, like real songwriting here, real talent. So I look for those moments first. I'm like, okay, there's something special here.
Got it.
Numbers certainly matter, and socials matter.
Okay. It's reality. It's a business.
It matters because you want to see an artist supporting their own career.
Yes.
So that's to the effect that the socials matter, at least for me in the early stage. But I'm looking for, do I love the music? Do I see a path forward?
Got it.
And I guess to further expand just a little bit, like, I'm not that concerned with the numbers that early.
Yep.
But that's also label specific. We are an indie label, so we're looking things that are maybe they need development, but they're also a little further along.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Not ground zero.
Yeah.
But like in the middle where it's like you see some progress has already been made and the foundation has been built.
Where you can tell they need a little help with marketing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And maybe, and A&R as well, but really marketing. Like they need help understanding putting campaigns together. Because if we're noticing them, the A&R aspect may have already kind of handled itself a little bit with the music.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Or we can hear a great writer and we know that they need better tracks.
So aside from signing artists, oftentimes people think like that's the only thing A&Rs do is sit around and just look through artists and sign artists all day, but there's actually much more to the job. So if you could kind of give us maybe your week to week, day to day kind of responsibilities that you do outside of just signing artists. What does A&R entail?
Well, for a label like ours, we all pick up the slack for a lot of things. So I have a heavy admin and operational aspect to my job as well. So really for the first part of my days, every day, is email and split sheets and invoices being paid and checking progress on things and things that I just call chores.
Okay.
You know, like making sure that the business is actually operating artist by artist. You know, like where does each project stand? What do we need to do? Where do we need help? And then the more creative side usually happens in the later hours of the day, in the evening.
Got it. And what does that creative side look like for you?
That creative side is usually, for me, it's actually listening to music and being unbothered.
Got it.
Being able to actually listen to it. Like I can't come in and listen to a lot of demos at 9:30 in the morning. Yeah. But at 6 p.m., I can really, you know, digest them. But it also, the other part besides just me listening to music is being with my artists and my creatives.
Got it.
You know, whether it's in the studio, whether we're just meeting to talk about things, or we're out socially, spending time getting to know the artists that I work with.
Building that rapport.
Yeah.
Actually not just like a artist that's signed, but there's actually like a genuine relationship you're developing with them beyond just the music part of it and the business part of it, but like just a genuine relationship. Like I care about you as an artist and as a person. I want to kind of get to know you more and help you along this journey.
Yeah, each artist is different.
Yep.
But with the artists that accept it, I want to be at every single thing they're doing, whether it's their photo shoots, if we need new PR shots, if it's a video shoot, I want to be there.
Yep.
I try to stay out of all of the sessions, but I at least try to show up, check on everybody, we good?
Yep.
Who needs what?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
And sometimes maybe I need to stay to make sure, because I do have that studio background, to make sure it flows properly and there's a rapport happening and technically it's working. But that's a lot of my post 6 p.m. work.
What is the best way you think for a producer to actually able to connect with an A&R? Like, do DMs even work? Do they need to be connected to someone who's connected to you? Like, how does that actually work for you?
Producers, that's a very specific, like, it's a very specific service they're offering, and not every A&R needs it, you know, but I actually will accept like submissions from most paths. It's DMs are okay with me. I know that I'm probably pissing off a lot of people by saying that, but I don't mind. What I do mind is if you just followed me and then I have a DM that day.
Got you.
You know what I mean? And I can tell you probably didn't know who I was before, but you may have saw my name on a Nas album or something. That kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, but most A&Rs, literally, it's our job to listen and to know. So I listen to about 85-90% of what's submitted to me.
Wow, that's high.
Yeah, very rarely do I just not listen unless I can kind of tell if something's not going to be worth listening to. You know, you can usually click a link and say, yeah, this would be a waste of my time. But I actually don't mind email. I don't mind DMs. I think it's really it does go a long way though to keep it short but informational. You know what I mean? And just understand the person you're hitting up, like if it's even a fit for you. You know, like don't spam everybody. Like I like it when somebody actually knows what I'm doing and kind of the world I'm in. And
does some research.
Exactly.
So like they know Exec. Oh, okay. They went to the website. They checked out the work. They know where they know where you're at right now. They know what kind of artists you have at the label. Like what you need for you. The one place I don't want to get hit up is LinkedIn. Because to me, that's not where you do that. You know what I mean? But DMs are fine. But email submissions with a couple good links in them, I'd prefer not to download anything. I'd rather have a link. I think just quickly establish a story for me. This is where I've been. This is what I'm up to. I think this might be not good for you. Got you.
You know what I mean?
Short, brief.
Yeah, exactly.
To the point. What's a really easy thing a producer can do to make their music stand out when being submitted? Like something, whether it be the way the file is labeled, like how you like something labeled, like those things are so small but very important when it comes to reaching out to an A&R and how they like to receive music.
I'm a super details person too. Especially from my technical background. Don't send waves.
Got you.
I prefer like a SoundCloud or a Disco, or there's so many different services that offer like playlisting. Whether it's public platform or private.
Got you.
I prefer that.
So you prefer something that's already playlisted where you can just push play and stream it as opposed to like a WeTransfer or a Dropbox.
The WeTransfers are cool, but you're adding steps to my day.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
I don't have time for. And if it's a weed transfer, I'm not going to listen on my phone if I'm sitting in traffic.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So I get a lot of texts. Like I have a lot of trusted people, throughout the business who just text me things like, "Hey, we're working on this."
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's something that I can quickly listen to while I'm in the car,
Got you.
that's kind of a cheat code,
Streamable.
Yeah.
Playlists.
But there are times though, like when you're further along in a relationship, when you want the files.
Yeah.
That way we can share with trusted partners
Gotcha.
within our internal team. I don't want to scare people off and think, oh, my music goes out.
Yeah.
Like if a label is getting more interested in something you're doing, it's good for the internal team that makes decisions to have access to it.
Of course.
You know what I mean? And that way they're not all maybe clicking the same link that maybe has a password or doesn't allow multiple, logins or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as collaboration amongst producers, there's nowadays more than ever, I feel like you might see 10 people produce one record, or 5 people made a loop, and some people have different opinions on how that affects the business. Now, as an A&R, do you ever consider that when it comes to having to clear a record or getting a production, getting beats from somebody? Like, oh man, 20 people produce this record, this is gonna be a headache, so I don't really want to get near it? Or is it something where you like to try to keep it as minimal as possible? Like, how do you approach those things?
Well, this is the core of everything we're going to talk about. Is a great song breaks all the rules.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't matter.
Got it.
But that does play a role, and this I think kind of ties into the question before, is if a producer is like clearly organized with their tracks and like maybe they drop the initials, like maybe this is a series of initials in the track of like who else worked on it, so at least they know.
Yep.
Because I'll sit in the studio with producers and they get loops from other people, and they'll be like, man, I went to we placed this record, I went back and they told me there was 5 other writers on this, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to deal with that, but if you know ahead of time, it's all right. If you know what I mean, if there's like some pre-agreements in place, then that's fine. But
so expectations are managed already with your collaborators.
And that's the thing too with a label our size, which a lot of labels are our size now. Is the artist teams are usually responsible for producer agreements. And if they're not handling that, in this scenario, then that's just going to make things a lot more difficult. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these things get handled post-release, which is not fun for anybody, and it's not how it should be. But the more organized a producer is with how their music is being made and who contributed, and having at least a very good idea of how that will split up if something moves is a huge plus.
What are some key mistakes that producers make that get their beats skipped when you're in the studio listening?
I think one is if they all basically are somewhat copies of each other.
Got it.
That's the first
Sonically.
thing. Yeah. Like variety is super important, and a lot of producers tend to place the beats that they think weren't going to work and they didn't want to play. But then the 3 they played, let's just say great trap beats they played first, they thought those were the ones, but when I'm listening, I'm like, no, they're 3 versions of the same thing. You know what I mean? But then I hear that 4th beat they didn't want to play, and I'm like, that's the one I was looking for. So I would say not having variety.
Got it.
To sum that up. And I would also say beats that are being overly shopped. Like I understand the producer game, and you kind of have to share everything until something hits. But I think if everybody has them, then I don't disclose it. But also maybe if everybody has them and they haven't hit, then maybe something,
Got it.
that we need to listen to a different pack. I would say also, I need to hear the producer's signature, not their tag, because I personally don't like tags, but I don't knock them, but I don't love them. But I think producers need to have sonic signatures. So when I'm listening and it all kind of sounds like beat packs and splice packs, but there's something additional that made this special by this producer, then I'm less interested. It could be the way it's mixed. Or it could be they always add this one thing in there that's like this one, they use a synth or like a certain type of grit in their tracks or whatever. It's something that separates them.
Separation.
You know what I mean? There's some producers who have tags that are actually just musical pieces
Yeah.
that people don't realize. You know what I mean? But then when you hear it, you're like, oh, you know, Red One did that because I heard the little horn. You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily have to be your name.
Engineers and splits on publishing and master when they place a beat. So everybody has a different opinion on that, and producers sometimes have feelings about an engineer wanting or taking something. How do you feel, say for instance somebody comes to you and gives you a beat, some producer you don't know, maybe hit you on DMs and you get a beat placed either through your own artist or through an artist at another label or what have you. How do you feel about engineers getting percentage of splits of publishing and master for placing a beat?
Oh, if it came from the engineer.
Yeah, like somebody sent you it and then you actually got it placed. Like the play wouldn't have happened without you.
This has happened for me.
Okay.
So there's a #1 album with a song that I placed as an engineer, but I won't say. Automatically, I think that anybody who plays a role in a record seeing the light of release should participate somehow.
Got it.
Now, speaking with my label hat, it's so hard to find the math with the way artist royalties and producer royalties are set up. So most of the time that conversation needs to come from the direct creative team, whether it's the producer or the artist. It's never gonna come from the label because a label is in a business, you know? And,
of course.
And sure, it would be nice if there was a universal rule that a majority engineer or mixer got a 1% master royalty on anything, but these days, you know, there's 20 engineers on an album, so how you get there is kind of hard.
Gotcha.
But I would say it really, and this is how I've seen it happen for me and for other engineers, it really becomes a talk with the producers.
Gotcha.
Of where that producer can find space in what they're being, you know, offered to also allot some for their creative partner. In terms of just like that case that you gave me, like a song comes and then the engineer helps it get placed, there should always be something there. Even it could be a finder's fee. You know?
Something.
And most good publishers and production companies usually do that, you know, so.
And you've worked with Nas, as you mentioned. What would you say is like a legendary moment or memory you have working with Nas that you could share with us? Something that stands out. I'm sure there are plenty, but maybe one that kind of really resonates with you.
So the way he records is it's usually just him and the engineer in the room. And it's an honor to be in that chair. So I don't take that lightly. So I try to keep a little bit of his privacy and sanctity.
For sure.
But I'll say this, when I'm in that chair recording him, that moment is when you're hearing him formulate something and coming out, and then you think that he's been doing it for such a high level for so long. Sometimes it's like you're not in the room, or you're actually looking down on the room, seeing it happen, because it's unbelievable that this significant, you know, spirited MC and poet still has such a high caliber of things to say and ways to say them. So for me, it's just actually when I record him and he's coming up with something new, those are the moments. You know?
You see the magic happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of, you know, times when I've been with him in social situations or celebrations or whatever. Those are great, and those are certainly fun moments for my legacy to remember I was there. But really, it's when you hear a new line come out and it just blows your mind, like, oh yeah, that's Nas in there. You know? It happens every time. Every time. I'm like, oh.
It's like we're being able to record one of the GOATs, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah, I don't take that lightly. And but I don't take that lightly with anybody I've ever recorded with.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so they all get, you know, a similar amount of attention and discretion with me. But,
for sure.
You know, with him,
it's just a certain status, you know. For anybody, hip hop fans who've been doing this for a minute or been around, he's just a legend, so I get it. Now, Mass Appeal is huge. A lot of people probably don't even know the things you do outside of just being a record label impact on culture. So if you could maybe just talk a little bit about Mass Appeal and the impact on culture today.
Mass Appeal is a few different things. It's one big company or one big brand that has a record label, has a content division, and it also has a creative agency. Obviously, we know Mass Appeal started as a magazine, a hip hop magazine, and we've always been really tied to the, let's just say the underground of hip hop, but especially lyricism. But through all these different mediums and verticals we can touch culture and help grow it in a lot of different ways.
For sure.
Most people are pretty familiar with the content division, which does Rhythm Roulette, or a lot of these documentaries and movies we do, like the Cypress Hill documentary.
Be Real, Muggs, and Stunning were everything that hip-hop needed to be.
They transcended hip-hop. They went beyond hip-hop.
The Video Music Box, that documentary that Nas actually, I think he co-directed that.
If they would just give us 5 seconds, we were waiting. I was waiting.
Even in the darkest times of hip-hop, he brought that bright light.
I'm your VJ, Ralph McDaniels, on the Video Music Box. If you're ready, let's get busy.
So that's what our content division does, a lot of visual-based media.
Yep.
And then our creative agency is where we can really help expand the culture even wider, and that's when we do a lot of corporate partnerships. So last year alone, we did something with Patron, we did something with Adidas, and we did a lot of things with Google Pixel. And one way that I can touch that is they all include a music element. So I'll come over from the label side and help them develop music for these different campaigns. And specifically, like the Patron project was, they were launching a new product called El Alto.
Okay.
So they wanted to, reach a certain audience. So we brought in Hit Boy and Offset to actually create a record for it.
Yep.
And then we created a whole mini documentary below it. And that required, it was, an idea that was sourced in the creative agency, but we had to, enlist the content division on the visual side and the record label on the music side to get it all done.
Dope.
So that's kind of how we are able to expand from the roots of hip hop that we always will be.
Got it. And what about something like, I actually went a couple weeks ago in LA here, the Hip Hop Till Infinity event, or I don't know what you guys call it, event, or
Well,
just it is an event to me because when
Yeah.
I went, I was like, this is crazy. But how do things like that come about from Mass Appeal?
That's a really great question, because that's a new thing, and that's probably another vertical that I'll be adding to my pitch.
Yep.
Is that we're leaning heavily into experiential now.
Got it.
So the Hip Hop Till Infinity exhibit is something where we can use that space to kind of continue storytelling, which is the core of Mass Appeal's brand, hip hop storytelling.
Yep.
So, we started that in New York around the hip hop anniversary, and we had the Hip Hop 50, the whole program, or the concerts, park jams, new music. And that's where that started, and we had such a great reaction to it that we decided to bring it here.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just extended it actually for
Really?
another 6 weeks as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's doing so well. That's just another brand and arm of us being able to tell stories.
Got it. So more of that could be down the pipeline. Yeah. Amazing. What would you say somebody who's watching is like, hey, I want to be an A&R, what steps should they be taking, or would you recommend for them to take to get into the business?
It's a great question, because it actually does include some of my steps. I would say if you want to be an executive, you should learn how everything works. So you might want to give yourself a year or so around a studio. You may want to actually learn how to make beats a little bit. I can produce, I just don't, because I'm not good. But I understand the process. You know what I mean? Like when I was a vocal producer, I went and got vocal coaching lessons, not only to make myself a better singer, but also to be able to coach the singers I was working with. You know what I mean? So I looked for enrichment in that way.
Okay.
So it's the same for an executive, because an executive, an A&R and a manager are very, very similar. Managers do way more, but you could flip the roles. A manager could be an A&R, an A&R could technically be a manager, because they see everything that happens with an artist. So I would say if you're young, in college years, you should enrich yourself in the different things. Maybe even go on a tour as like a PA, or like a second day-to-day manager or something like that. You should immerse yourself in all of the things that are part of the artist life cycle. That way, when you land at a label, let's say you land at a label and you're 26, you're heavily equipped at a young age to really speak with authority on things. You need to be outside all the time.
Gotcha.
A&Rs especially. There's different kinds of A&Rs. There's the A&Rs that kind of know everybody. And are like vibe people. And they may not do a lot of operational things, but they know how to say, oh yeah, I know so-and-so, you should talk to them. And then that starts something that turns into, you know, a massive artist. Those kind of A&Rs tend to be outside a lot.
Yep.
Then there are a lot of A&Rs that are also heavy operational that understand, you know, both sides. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. But you should be outside as an A&R too.
Networking.
For sure.
Got it. Be
Yeah.
outside, networking, build
Yeah,
relationships.
yeah, and just meeting people. You don't have to have a lot of intention when you meet somebody other than say, oh yeah, you know, I mess with what you're doing.
Yep.
I'm just learning, I'm in the game, I'm young, you know. I get a lot of that, and a lot of these people, then I'll invite them to Hip Hop Till Infinity, like our opening night or something.
Yep.
You know, and I'll look for ways, you know, to incorporate maybe somebody who I see who has that drive.
Yeah.
You know.
Got
So be outside. That's
Be
that should
outside.
be rule number one for A&Rs, and then everything else after
Secondary.
that.
Be outside.
Yeah.
You know, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us for the Melody App series In the Loop. Check for Exit here. Exit, what's the website? Exit1200.com.
Yeah, exit1200.com is my website.
So what's the socials?
It should be all be Exit1200.
Exit 1200,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
check for the man.
Yeah.
And thank you for the jewels that you dropped, and hopefully the people get something out of that.
For sure.
Appreciate you,
Yeah,
man.
man.
All right, thanks.